Hey there, it's Zach at Feel Free to Argue. We certainly had a very exciting week on Wall Street last week. We're trying to find out, why isn't this bailout working? I mean, we're on the hook now for $700 billion. We don't seem to be seeing much financial recovery for our bailout dollar, do we? I mean, it was dropping like a Led Zeppelin out there on Wall Street last week. Well, I think the major problem, as various people are pointing out, is that we're in deep. We're in so deep that it's hard to imagine how deep we're in. And the $700 billion, as big as that is just a drop in the bucket. And more importantly, that $700 billion, it was spent. It was spent when they already gave the authorization for the money. I was watching Michael Hudson. He was Dennis Kucinich's chief economic advisor, and he was on Democracy Now! Last Friday. Let's hear what he had to say. Well, what upsets the Europeans and the foreigners is that the U.S. plan has done nothing at all about the debt crisis itself. It's bailed out the creditors, but not a penny of the actual debts, the subprime mortgage debts, are addressed. Without any of the media knowing, the Federal Reserve over the last few months has given $850 billion of cash for trash already. This is what the $700 billion discussion in Congress was supposed to be about, but the Fed, without anyone knowing, has already been exchanging these securities. And the securities essentially have been swapped by the U.S. bankers to their pals and not done anything at all to write down the actual subprime debts. There's a big attempt to blame the victim now. By victim, they mean you. And if you add up all of the subprime bad loans and defaults, that's altogether $1 trillion. So far, the government has given away $6 trillion already to Wall Street. That's much more than any of the subprime debt. And the volume of derivative trade has been estimated at $450 trillion, an unbelievable amount. So nobody has any idea how much money is at stake. And this derivatives market, these derivatives that are related to the performance of things in the greater economy, I mean, people don't even know how much they are. I mean, he says they're estimated at $450 trillion. I've seen estimates going up to a quadrillion. A quadrillion, just for people who like, playing around with big numbers, a quadrillion represents 10 times the value of all the stuff in the world. So the net value of everything, from Happy Meal toys to big screen TVs to, your piece of shit lawnmower sitting out in your yard getting rusty, the net value of everything in the world is 100 trillion. In other words, 1/10 of this quadrillion number. So, if this goes bad, well, there ain't nothing going to be saving anybody. And I'm not even sure, what's even propping this up. I mean, how is it that we have financial arrangements that are out there that represent 10 times the total value of everything on Earth? Well, I mean, aside from that, we have the problem of the fact that any kind of bailout that we have is basically going to be financed on the backs of, the foreigners who have been financing us all along. And, I mean, large part of, the whole bailout crisis is us trying to reassure the people who are paying for us to engage in our immoral acts. And here's Paul Craig Roberts talking about that kind of aspect of the situation. The U.S. might also be on the verge of a decision by foreign lenders to cease financing a country that claims to be a hegemonic power with the right and the virtue to impose its will on the rest of the world. The U.S. is able to be at war in Iraq and Afghanistan, and is able to pick fights with Iran, Pakistan, and Russia, because the Chinese, the Japanese, and the sovereign wealth funds of the oil kingdoms finance America's wars and military budgets. Aside from nuclear weapons, which are also in the hands of other countries, the U.S. has no assets of its own with which to pursue its control over the world. The U.S. cannot be a hegemonic power without foreign financing. All indications are that the rest of the world is tiring of U.S. arrogance. If the U.S. Treasury's assumption of bailout responsibilities becomes excessive, the U.S. dollar will lose its reserve currency role. The minute that occurs, foreign financing of America's twin deficits will cease, as will the bailout. The U.S. government would have to turn to the printing of paper money, as did Weimar Germany. So get your wheelbarrow ready. You're going to need that much money in order to buy anything here soon. Once, like the rest of the world, decides, we don't have to take America's shit anymore. They're weak. So, I'd like to finish up with another quotation from Michael Hudson. This is from the same Democracy Now! Program. And they were asking about, what kind of, isn't it bad that, they don't seem to know what they're doing. They seem to be going from one solution to another. This was his answer to that. It would be very nice if it were veering from one solution to another, but it really has only been a single line of solution, and that is to bail out Wall Street banks. There's nobody suggesting here, nobody's suggesting in Europe, write down the debt of the debtors. Rewrite, nobody's suggesting to rewrite the bankruptcy law. Nobody's suggesting to reintroduce progressive taxation. They're not even suggesting a closing down of all the tax gimmicks that make so many companies tax-free. So they're actually following a very narrow, single-minded approach to only make the creditors whole on their losses. Don't do anything about the debts. And so nothing at all they're going to be talking about this weekend is going to be addressing the economic slowdown or the recession. And for that reason, we're going to get worse. Shortly after that, Amy Goodman asked him, well, what should you do? What should a common investor do? And he just admits that everyone he knows, every market analyst that he knows has all their money out of the market. I mean, market's just for suckers like you and me now. The big boys have got their money out of there. So they don't care what happens to it anymore. It's not their problem. So I think all in all, I think we can see that the bailout is not going to solve because, the one thing the bailout was supposed to do was try to convince foreigners that we're actually still a solvent country. And I can't imagine anything that would more dramatically demonstrate to foreigners that we are a banana republic that doesn't have accurate financial reporting and is something that you should absolutely stay away from than the bailout proposal, because it was poorly thought out, it was just a giveaway, it doesn't address any of the core problems of our economy, and represents basically an attempt to blame the victim for the malfeasance of the banks. So that's my take on it, and certainly feel free to argue.